America. Well, hello, Glue Troopers, and I was going to talk about markings on your model aircraft for the Battle of Midway for the U.S. Navy and the Japanese Imperial Navy, because, of course, we just had the 80th anniversary of Midway. And then I thought, well, I could also talk about the markings on aircraft that would have been over the beaches of Normandy in World War II, because we just had the 78th anniversary of the invasion of Normandy. So June was definitely not a good month for the Axis. But then I realized it might be a little simple and straightforward just to cover a little basic information on the U.S. military's roundels and markings during the Second World War. So we all know there are just all kinds of markings on international aircraft. You think of the Japanese as being fairly straightforward with the red Hinamaru, but even it had a bunch of variations. The British roundels had numerous variations, usually on the same airplane. And of course the Germans, there were countless ways to make the Balkan Cross. But I realized, you know what, that's really starting to get into the weeds. So how about we just do a basic video on American roundel markings in World War II and one or two other details that are directly related. So to begin with, we will use the standard, what I call red dot roundel. This insignia dates back to the U.S. Army Air Service. This roundel was used from August 19th of 1919 until the 28th of May in 1942. Now, one thing that's significant is that means that the Battle of Coral Sea, which was in April of 1942, had this marking on the aircraft. And a lot of footage from the Battle of Coral Sea is often mistakenly used in documentaries about the Battle of Midway because they were the same aircraft, but they were marked differently. Also, during the Battle of Coral Sea, naval aircraft and Marine Corps aircraft still had the red and white striped rudders. The Navy obviously decided that since we were fighting an enemy with red markings on their airplanes, it was probably a good idea to eliminate the red from ours. So on May 28, 1942, the red dot roundel was replaced with a white star on a blue roundel. Basically, they just had to remove the red dot and cover it in white. But they also subdued the rudders and got rid of those red and white stripes, which made it pretty easy for enemy gunners to draw a bead on you. Now, there is one exception or modification of this roundel, and that was during Operation Torch, the invasion of French North Africa, when the roundels were given a high visibility yellow band around them to help with aircraft identification. After Operation Torch, these yellow bands were painted over, but sometimes still bled through a little bit. On June the 29th, 1943, the military decided it was time to make the roundels a little more visible, so they put white bars sticking out each side and put a red trim around it. But, of course, especially in the Pacific, this red trim still made it possible in a glimpse to mistake an American for a Japanese aircraft, as red is a powerful color that travels well. So this only lasted for a couple of months, and the red trim was ordered removed on August 14th, 1943. So as of August 19th, 1943, what many people call the Star and Bar roundel became the standard for all military services. It was on the upper surface of the port wing, the lower surface of the starboard wing, and on both sides of the fuselage. After the war in 1947, the red bar was added to the middle of the white bar, and that is the official insignia still used today on military aircraft. However, the colors are subdued to dark and light gray on combat aircraft. As an aside, there's also a little confusion about the name of the World War II United States Air Force. It was the U.S. Army Air Service from 1918 to 1926, and then it became a corps within the Army, so it was the U.S. Army Air Corps from July of 1926 until June of 1941, although there was some overlap when it became the United States Army Air Force in June of 41. However, the Air Corps still existed for a few more months as an organizational body before it was eventually completely absorbed. So to keep it simple for a World War II modeler, the United States Army Air Corps existed until June of 41, when it then became the United States Army Air Force. And of course, it became the United States Air Force in September of 1947. And if you're wondering what was the big deal between Air Corps and Air Force, it's more than it sounds like. It wasn't just a name change. Up until this point, the Air Corps had been a corps under the U.S. Army, but when it became the U.S. Army Air Force, the generals commanding were now equal to the commanders of other branches of the service. Kind of a big deal internally and where the command structure was concerned. But as far as models are concerned, I wanted to focus more on the roundels. And yes, it took a while for these aircraft to get their paint jobs altered. So you could see a bomber in Europe that says USAAC or United States Army Air Corps or U.S. Army or something of that nature underneath the wings or on the markings, because everything did not get changed with the flip of a switch. Just like a few of the aircraft at Midway still had the red dots and the stars, or still had the red and white rudders. There's actually some footage just before the battle of Torpedo Squadron 8, and a few of the airplanes still have the red dots on the lower stars. That was probably because when the wings were folded on the torpedo planes, they were about 11 feet in the air, and in the confines of an aircraft carrier, it could be very difficult for a crew member to get up there to blot them out. Anyway, I just wanted to cover that little thing on the rather confusing nature of American military roundels, and here is a basic listing of them for you as a quick reference. Well, guys, I hope you're having a great day, model, and take care of yourselves, and as always, model on.